Okay, Chapter 1, Lesson 3 of Geometry is where we really start to get into some of the geometry vocabulary. And it's really important that you understand and learn this vocabulary very well, because we will be using these words for the rest of the year. Okay? And so it's important that you know these words and you're able to use them in context and to understand what we're talking about. Okay, there's a lot of information in this lesson, so I'm going to break this up into 3 videos. So we'll work our way through the 3 videos. The first video will look at some the definition excuse me, of points and lines. Then we'll look at planes, and then we'll look at some axioms and postulates that we're going to be using again throughout the year. So real important lesson. Hopefully you've been working on your note-taking skill and summary writing so that you really begin to practice using those skills as we work our way through this. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first section, some basic terms of geometry. And we don't need to worry about that paragraph here. We'll look at the first word here. And again, as we read the paragraph, we're looking just for the key point. We're not going to copy down sentences out of the book. We have printing presses that do that. And you don't have to write down everything I say. You want the key points, okay, when you're looking at a lecture. So, or listening to a video or reading a book. You can think of a point as a location. A point has no size. It is represented by a small dot. It is named by a capital letter. So in these few sentences, we have 4 characteristics that you need to know about a point. Okay? A point, first of all, is a location. It's a way we represent a location. I always use an example of let's see if I can get it to come up here. Come on. A map of Ripon. Okay, here's where I live. I live in Ripon. Notice that in Ripon it has this dot on the piece of paper. Now that's a point, and it's representing a location. But that point, if you drive to Ripon, you can look all over Ripon. You're not going to find that dot anywhere, because that dot doesn't exist in a very concrete way. It's just a way to represent the location of Ripon. So we use a point to represent a location, even though it's not actually a location. Okay, sorry, I reset that by mistake here. Let me see. The second thing about a point that we need to know is that it has no size. Again, it's just representing a location. It doesn't have a size, so there's no standard point size for a point because they don't have any size. We represent a point or a location by using a small dot, and we name it with a capital letter. Now this is going to be very important as we go throughout the year. Every time we come to a new term or a new description of something, there's going to be a way that you name it, a mathematical way to name it. And it's very important that you use that way to name it, because if you don't, you might be saying one thing or thinking one thing, but the way you have it written out, the way you named it, you'll be describing something else. So just like you have a name, my name is Mr. Godfrey. If you called me Mr. Tupelo, well, they're both names. Does it matter which one? Well, yes, because I'm not Mr. Tupelo. I'm Mr. Godfrey. So the name that goes with the specific term is very important. So we're going to talk a lot about those, and we are going to be graded on those, so make sure you know how to name different things. So the first thing you're going to learn how to name is a point. So a point has these 4 things, these 4 characteristics. Here's a point. It has no size. It's just representing an equation. I could have drawn a smaller point. I could have drawn a bigger point. Doesn't matter because it doesn't have any size to begin with. And then I use a letter A, a capital letter, to name it. Never a lowercase, capital letters. Which, by the way, reminds me of one other thing. For those of you who do a lot of printing, okay, that you always print everything, in mathematics, there's a huge difference between, let's say, a lowercase m and a capital letter M. They represent 2 entirely different things. So if you're a person that always writes capital letters, you're going to have to learn the difference on when to use a capital and when to use the lowercase. Okay? Because they represent 2 different things. And I have to know that you know what you're talking about. And the only way I can do that is if you're using the correct case of the letter. So if you're naming a point, you want to describe, hey, I'm talking about this point here, you must use a capital letter. Okay, and again, back to Ripon here. You'll go to Ripon, you'll never find this point. It's just representing a location. Okay, that's all it is. Okay, let's take a look at the next part of this section, or the next part of this paragraph that we didn't look at. A geometric figure is a set of points. Okay, and space is defined as a set of all points. Okay, so there's two things we want to look at here. We want to look at space, the final frontier. No, for you Star Trek fan, space is not the final frontier. Space is the set of all points. Okay, so any point that you could possibly imagine anywhere, if you took all of those points and put them all together, every location known, that's space. Okay, so that's what space is. Now, a geometric figure is just a set of points, meaning if space is all the points, what if I just want to talk about these points right here in this group? Okay, this set of points, so I'm only talking about this set of points, that's normally going to make some kind of figure. So all geometric figures are a set of points taken from all the points, which are called space. So space is all the points. I just want to talk about these points right here. I might be talking about a square. All the points that are in this location right here, they make up a square. All the points in this location, out of all the points of space, make a triangle. These make a circle. All right? So there you have the definition of space and a geometric figure. All right, let's look at a line. A line is a series of points. Okay, so that's important. Series of points goes in opposite directions without end. Okay, so important here, lines go on, they never end. You name a line by using 2 points on a line, like A and B, and notice that this symbol right up here is very important because it's going to distinguish, because we're going to use 2 letters to name other things. So how do we know which one we're talking about? So it's very important. You read this as line AB. Another way to name a line, another way, is with a single lowercase letter, such as line T. Okay? So a lot of information about a line, all of it very, very important. So let's take some time to go through it. First thing is, a line is a set of points. So just like we talked about before, all geometric figures are a set of points. A line is a set of points, so it is a geometric figure. These points are very specific in that they go in opposite directions. So if I'm standing here in a point, a location, if I look this way and I look this way, all the points this way put together with all the points this way forever represent a line. So a line goes on forever and ever and ever, because space goes on forever and ever and ever. There's no end to it. Okay, there is no end to it. How do we name a line? Again, how do we name a point? We name it with a capital letter. A line is just a bunch of points. Okay, so how do we name a line? We're going to take any 2 points on this line, and we're going to use those in order to name a line. Or I can use a single lowercase letter. Now, it's important to understand here that the lowercase letter isn't a point, because how do we name points? Capital letters. So if I have a lowercase letter, am I talking about a point? No, I'm not. So it's very important. Again, we talked about this going to be very kind of technical and picky, but again, for mathematics, it's very important to understand capital letters mean one thing, lowercase letters mean something else, and so you have to be very specific and careful about what you're talking about. Okay. We also, if we're using the capital letters, if we're using the 2-point method of naming a line, we must use this line symbol above the letters. It's a line symbol. It's a line that has arrows going on both ends to indicate we're talking about something that goes on forever in both directions, which is what a line does. Okay, so a lot of information. So here you have an example. Here's a line. Okay, here are 2 points on the line. Okay, so I can use these 2 points to name the line using point A with point B together with the line symbol over them. That indicates a line, and I read that as line AB. Or I can use this lowercase letter here. Again, this lowercase letter is not a point on the line. How do I know that? Because it's not a capital letter. All right, so line T. Okay, so those are the two ways to do that. I think what we ought to do is probably take a look at some examples on naming a line. Let's see, actually, I think we need to cover this first because I think my examples cover this as well. So let's continue to read this. We already read this first part, talks about a line, and it names one last vocabulary here, talks about collinear points. Collinear points are points that are on the same line. So any points that are on the same line are considered to be collinear. That means on the same line. So again, A and B that we use to name the line, they're on the same line, so those would be considered as collinear points. Okay, so let's look at an example, and if you can answer these questions. So name line M in 3 other ways. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So if I find line M, well, here's the lowercase m, here's M, so we're talking about this line right here. Okay, how can I name that line in 3 other ways? So how do we name a line? We can use any 2 points that are on the line and then the line symbol. So here's a line, here's point F, here's point E, even though it's not there where 2 lines intersect, it makes a point. We'll talk about that later. And here's a point. So I can name this line using any 2 points on the line with the line symbol. So one way I could do this would be to do E, F with the line symbol over the top. That's one way. Another way I could do it would be F and C. Those 2 points are on the line. Another way I could do it would be, I don't know, I use 2 points. I can use E and C would be another way that I could name the line. Okay? Now actually, there's another way. I could name it a different way by reversing the letters. FE would be another way. So I could reverse those letters. CF would be another way. And then I could reverse these letters. CE, that would be even another way. So you can see there's lots of different ways to name the line. The more points you have on the line, the more choices you have. And again, any 2 letters and the line symbol is okay. Never use more than 2 letters, never use less than 2 letters, and never use a different symbol other than that symbol there.